Does it feel like the San Francisco 49ers are going to make a move that no one is expecting, or is it just me? Because that's exactly how I feel. Now, what that move looks like, I don't know. We're going to talk about a couple scenarios here in a second, but just the overall notion that the San Francisco 49ers could do something that we aren't really expecting, because if you ask most of the fans, there's a couple things at the top of the list in regards to what the 49er fandom want to see get done to rebuild and restack and retool this roster to get back to a championship. And a lot of it is offensive line, and offensive line. And I get it. We need some offensive line help. But let's talk about most realistic outcomes for the San Francisco 49ers offensive line. There are some really quality free agents on the market that the 49ers could go out and get. And that could really be an option for the 49ers if that's what they wanted to do. Or they could bring back a guy like Jonathan Feliciano, who earned the starting role at the end of the season, and you could bring him in, have an open competition in training camp between him and Spencer Burford, and let the best man win. And if there's any indication based on last year, Jonathan Feliciano probably wins that right guard spot. But when he was playing really well. Obviously, he went out in the Super Bowl and some bad things happened as a result. So, getting Feliciano, second year in this scheme, you could shore up that right guard position at a fraction of the cost of going out and doing, let's say, what the Rams just did in signing guard Kevin Dotson to a 3-year, $48 million deal. Now, Feliciano would come in at a absolute fraction of that cost. We know he fits in what the 49ers are trying to do, and he also can play the center position. So he brings not only versatility with him, but he can be a starter in this scheme. And with that being said, also the likely outcome is that Colton McKivitz remains. He will be here. And the question becomes, do the San Francisco 49ers trade up into the first round to try to get one of these 8 or 9 blue chip tackles? And if they don't, I don't know if there is a guarantee that if you take a tackle at 31, kind of in that second tier group, or you take a tackle in the second or third, that it's a guarantee that any of those guys are coming in and beating out Colton McKivitz. And I think the biggest thing with Colton McKivitz is people need to understand that he is an immense value in regards to what you're paying him. So getting a starting caliber player, whether you believe he's top end, bottom end of that starting spectrum, he is coming in at an immense value. So if the 49ers opt to bring back Jonathan Feliciano, maybe look to bring Colton McKivitz back as the starter and potentially draft an offensive tackle in rounds 2 or 3 that could compete, but McKivitz ultimately wins. That also gives the 49ers the flexibility to go out and make a big time splash at potentially defensive end, cornerback, or another position of need like that. Now, again, I can already see the comments filling up. Everyone's freaking out about the plan that I just presented to you. But you have to remember, this is the 49ers. They don't necessarily have a track record of dumping huge assets into the offensive line. It's just not something that they've always put a huge emphasis on. And if you can get Feliciano at a value, McKivitz at a value, and start stockpiling developmental guys who could eventually take over, that could allow you to put your focus on other key positions. So for me, it feels like those key positions are defensive end and cornerback. And we already know when we're looking at those positions currently, at cornerback, you have an all pro in Mooney Ward and Diamador Lenore, who's been phenomenal. Those are two quality guys. But as we know, in this league that has become predominantly a passing league, 3 cornerbacks of starting caliber are a necessity, and pass rush is a necessity. as well. So that's why for me, those two positions become at the top of the list. I think the 49ers can be very smart in building out the offensive line room in a cost control standpoint, as well as supplementing some other positions. But when it comes to defensive end, when it comes to cornerback, that is a premier position. And I don't think the 49ers want to piecemeal it together again. We saw them do that with both and struggled in both areas at the end of the year. So why not go out and swing for the fences? And who could be the potential target if they do that? Well, you guys know the hive is always buzzing. And to be honest, it has been buzzing a lot louder these last couple days. Brian Burns is a guy that I have wanted with the San Francisco 49ers and really thought of more of just a dream scenario. But I do think there is more reality as the days go on that this could be something that the 49ers could actually go and do. We had Josina Anderson put out this tweet earlier today, kind of explaining the situations going on with Brian Burns and what it could lead to in regards to getting a deal done. So let's take a look at what Josina Anderson has to say. She says, regarding Carolina's current situation with Brian Burns, a league source told me, in their opinion, that the Panthers should adapt better to present circumstances in order to potentially consummate a trade. The source said, in their view, it's a double whammy to pay huge money for a player and also give huge draft compensation to the other team for a deal. They added, the time to get more draft picks was when the player has years left on their deal. But if the player is in their last year and the other team has to be prepared to keep the player or take less. Josina Anderson goes on to say, I've heard some league sources say a third round compensation is fair for Brian Burns if the acquiring team is also giving him a long term deal. But that asking for one plus is definitely too much for them. So to kind of summarize what this is effectively what I've said for multiple years regarding the conversation surrounding Brian Burns and where it stands now for a team who is trading for a franchise tag player who wants a new deal and a long-term extension, and you're trading for this guy and you have to pay him. The team that is trading him away cannot expect top tier return in regards to draft compensation like the Rams offered up 2 years ago, which was two firsts, I believe, and then another mid round pick. That's not on the table anymore because the Rams would have had the opportunity to have multiple cost controlled years of Brian Burns on the rookie deal, hence why it made sense for them to give up that monstrosity of a trade to go and get him. But it doesn't make sense anymore. So the point being is, if the Panthers are asking for a first round pick plus more, and this other league source is saying third round compensation is fair, to me, it's more in the middle. I really do believe if the San Francisco 49ers wanted to go out and get this thing done, all it would take would be pick 31, which is effectively a high second round pick, but you have the luxury of having the fifth year option built in. And if the 49ers were to give a comp third, which is a free pick for them, and they have another third, to me, what's the problem with that? That seems like you could get it done. Now, of course, the Panthers might not want to be picking at 31, but they don't have a first round pick. And like I said, you have the option of getting that fifth year attached. And so I feel like that compensation is right in the middle of kind of what both of them are talking about. A third round pick for Brian Burns, too low. That doesn't make sense. You look at D Ford, and the San Francisco 49ers made that trade from the Chiefs to go get D Ford for a second round pick and then paid him. that's kind of, and I would say Brian Burns is a better prospect right now than D Ford was, because D Ford did have some back injuries and some concerns. So I would say you can give a little bit more. So that's why for me, pick 31 and a comp third for Brian Burns, and a guy that, hey, if you can pay him, and that's always going to be the next question, can you pay him? The 49ers can generate more cap space with restructures and extensions of current players on the team. And of course, if you're extending him, you're also extending the cap hit over future years and not this year. So you could go get Brian Burns and you can go get more. So that's where I'm looking at it. Now, could you go out and get a Patrick Surtain potentially? Is there other players? It doesn't just have to be Brian Burns. I think there are multiple players that, like we look at the Denver Broncos, they're gutting their entire team. They just got rid of Justin Simmons. They're going, and per some Broncos insiders, some more deals are going to be done. So could a Patrick Surtain be a guy? Like, that's why, again, I'm looking at cornerback, edge. If you can get me a premier edge, a premier corner in this passing heavy league where we can patchwork the offensive line. And I know that's not what anyone wants to hear, but we've seen it happen consistently throughout the Lynch Shanahan regime. And they go and put resources into the defense and then marry these two together. That could be something that I think is a real possibility. Now, you guys know, heavy bias in the Brian Burns camp. I want it to happen. I want to see a legit edge rusher on the opposite side of Nick Bosa. I feel like that, like guys like Patrick Mahomes would be in a lot of trouble when you got the speed and power combination with those two edge rushers. So that would mask a lot of like a lot of potential issues that you would think you have to go out and get a guy like that. Remember, 25, 26 years old, in the prime of his career, and just looking for a home. And the Panthers have proven not to be that. So I feel like something could be happening. Do I feel like it's Brian Burns? I don't know, but it could be something. I feel like the 49ers are going to take a swing. They understand what it is. It's still a win now window. And just like they did with Hargrave, you got to push your chips into the middle and go and get it done. So, what is the win now move you would like to see? Again, doesn't have to be Brian Burns, but if it is Brian Burns, let me know as well. Patrick Surtain, another name that we haven't even talked about that the 49ers could go out and get potentially via trade. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.